All right, so here we are at Rossford Marina, and we are working on a Glastron 249 GT. I'm bringing you in on this one so you can see exactly how and why I do certain things. So this is getting a full overhaul. This Jensen, gone. The speaker that doesn't exist right there, getting added. Another speaker down there, it's getting added. The Garmin's going to stay here. The controller is going to get changed out. Everything we're going to go for is Kenwood. Why would I go with Kenwood? Why would I do a 332? This has the best EQ. All Kenwoods have the best EQ compared to their predecessors and competition. Well, the Bluetooth on them though, I will say sucks. I haven't had a good Bluetooth yet. These controllers are not too bad. They seem to last quite a while. The screen is a little fidgety, but if you don't tighten them down too tight, they don't screw up. So because we have such a thin space over here, I don't want to jam anything in the wrong spot. I either thought about doing a speaker here so it's not pointing to the side and, you know, pretty much piercing the person next to you, or putting it right there. I think we're going to put it right there. And then over here, I think what's going to happen is we're going to put one of the speakers probably right here. Now the biggest issue that I'm going to have there is this is all padded, so when I go to hook into this, it's going to be a little crappy when I go to drill, but we can always glue, fold it over, cut the seams, tighten it up. The speaker will stick out a little bit, but that's okay, because if I go back behind, it's going to do the same thing anyway. So radio's going, 2 more speakers are getting added, and 2 more speakers in the back. Currently, it has DB drive. I think they're APW65 whites. These are horrible. That tweeter may as well not even exist. Everything you listen to on here is pretty much dull. It does have an LED ring that you could put in there, but they're not in there. And these are really just paper cone. They're not polypropylene, they're not peat. They're nothing. They're not even fiberglass. So these speakers are shit. So we're gonna put 8s in here, all 4 of them. So we're gonna go from 2 speakers to 8-inch 4 speaker. And we're gonna put a PM 604. That is a Marine Fosgate 4-channel 600 watt on it. And we are going to turn it all the way up. Now, a lot of the time, you're gonna run into issues where 45 minutes and 55 minutes in on full blast, you are going to mess up the amp. It's gonna go into thermal trip. Why Fosgates do that, I don't know, but they always do. I can take an oscilloscope, set it all up, get the peak waveform, get it right up to the edge of the transistors and MOSFETs when they're triggering, and it'll still cap out, even the power series. So we have a custom build for that. About 45-50 minutes on the Fosgate punch and power series. If you run them up like you should, and you're beating on them pretty hard, what ends up happening is this amp will pull so many volts and so many amps to power itself and to run the load. Well, this thing runs off a given constant wattage. Well, if the voltage drops because you're parked, you're not hooked to shore power, you're hooked to batteries and not the engine's not running, if the volts start to go down, which they will, then what ends up happening is the current starts to go up. As the current goes up, this amp gets hot because it is demanding more power than what the batteries are putting out at a higher voltage. That's why when you look at transmission lines, you have high voltage, low current. That is because voltage travels better than current does. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this thing up to still run at high power, but we're going to cool it. We're going to make sure it stays cold. Yes, is it going to draw more power? Sure. We're going to put LEDs under it so that the edges of this plexiglass, we got 1/4 inch plexiglass for a mount surface, those LEDs are going to pull power. But your amp is not going to overheat. So the difference in time versus the power draw is going to be well worth the justification. So we're going to do that. All of this stuff is going to be controlled via the crossovers. We are not going to be hooking a line control on this. I don't like them. They always seem to give like fuzzy feedback, or they rot, or they fall apart. It's just extra wire. It's not necessary regardless of what the factory will tell you. It's not usable. Just don't get it. Learn to use your radio. turn it down based on the signal output of the radio or the sub line. So we got 4 gauge going in, remote, we'll have all our audio signal, and then we will have our speaker lines. These are all good for 10 amps. If you didn't know, these do not run 12 volt and then push out all that V equals IR. This does not run at 12 volts when it pushes a signal out. So at 10 amps, this is fine, because these typically on a Fosgate push anywhere from 50 to 100 volts out of them. So at 10 amps, you're talking 1,000 watts per channel. This is not doing that. It is a Punch Marine 600 4-channel. So with the way we'll be setting it up, we'll be getting nominally a realistic about 100 watts out of this. So, lighting effect. What are we going to do with lights? Well, I personally hate it when people bring those junk lights that look like these. These strip lights, trash. Don't do it. If you have any competency whatsoever, go out and get yourself some of these. Cree LEDs. You solder to them, you set them up however you want, you get a resistor, so you get, once again, your V equals IR. So set it up for 13 volts is pretty safe. And set it up for 30% lower than what the amperage rating on it is. And we'll be running that with a regular controller, a 30 amp controller. That is 10 amps per line. That is not 30 amps per line. This will do everything that you need it to do. Not to mention, this can be put anywhere. It doesn't have a proprietary plug. These don't have proprietary plugs. This is $20 versus $90 for a controller from an audio company. And if you lose the remote, which you won't because you have a phone, if you dump it in the water, you scan the QR code, the app is still there. So you're not losing remotes, you don't have a plug and play issue, you don't burn out the controller and have to replace all the lights, none of that. This will be mounted on here as well, and this will control everything on the boat. This also takes out $200 off of your cost, because I'm using the Kicker 8-inch. Those have LEDs, while the controller is $180 to get it set up the way you want. This is not $180, and it's still the same RGB controller. So why would I buy the Kicker one? Why would I buy a Fosgate one? Why would I jump into the M2 system? Like, there's no point. So in order to save the customer a whole bunch of money, roughly about $1,000 on this build, plus the custom stuff here, he doesn't even know he's getting this. He thinks I'm going to bolt this to the bottom of his seat, zip tie all the cables, and just run them in a big pattern to somewhere he can't find them. He does not care. Well, this is actually going to become a centerpiece, and it's going to be set up to be one. So we even got down to the lathe and made specific size collars for it. So this video we'll post after the boat is done. But all right, let's get into locations on the install. Another nice thing about this stuff, speaker wire is not resistant to like anything at all. This may be not as flexible, however this is oil, gas, and UV resistant, and the UL signs it off. Speaker wire, you're not going to find that. Any brand. This is better. Alright, so here we are. Got the blower, got the LED. That is a Cree XPE LED puck. That's all I use. Those are two ceramic or cement resistors. Yeah, the diffused thing and all of that, I don't even acknowledge those anymore. These are where it's at. So this is all 12 volt. We got the Bluetooth controller, got a relay to kick it on and off. But yeah, there it is. Alright, so we got the holes drilled, or at least the pilots, all the way around. What we're going to do now, we're going to go in there and locate them. And there they are. Got one here, one here, one here, and one here. So we're going to take a razor blade. We're going to cut that circle up. We're going to cut it interior of that hole diameter, of that radius around there. So the hole that's right here, we're going to start cutting inward. That way we don't lose any fabric. All right, so these are speakers we're going with, the KM8s. Most people get them on the towers, but you really don't need to. They fit really well. They last a long time. They got the lights already in them. You don't have to pay for anything. And we are going to use a separate controller. We are going to wire our own controller for this. We're not going to do some off-the-shelf $180 thing. So speaker rolls turned out good. Nice and smooth all the way around. That is a 36 grit, 1.5" die grinder, DeWalt, 20 volt. Both sides turned out good. So what he doesn't know is that we're actually adding a speaker here, a speaker over there where you can see it drawn. And the cool thing is, it's down here. Normally you would take the amp and put it out there. We're not going to do that. We're going to mount that sucker right here. We're going to light it up, put a fan on it, put the amp sideways, run the cable in a tray, and DIN rail mount everything. Not even going to make it look bad at all. We're going to make that whole thing completely custom. It's all going to sit right there, and it's going to look good. You're going to want to see it. The only thing we got to do now is when we cut this one, we're going to have to put a hole back here, or through here, and then we're going to have to cut an X away from it with the same stencil. That way we know that we're actually in the right place, and we can cut the fabric away without going too far with it, fold it over, and we'll be good. So what we'll do is we'll drill a hole at the very top, the very bottom, the right and the left, and then we'll go back there and we'll cut an X to the holes, and we'll bring the fabric away. The fabric does not have to go as far as that size of a hole. What it needs to do though is it needs to go far enough away that it can wrap back in. So we won't cut any of the fabric off. We'll actually tape it back up there. So we'll take it, cut it, and we'll fold it back and tape it against the wall in here. Let's get to it. All right, we got it all cut up. There it is. And what we'll do when we go to drill is we'll come in, you know, like we're straight, we'll cant it off like this. That way we drill into the cone instead of tearing up all the fabric on the edge where we're gonna have to roll it over. Let's get started. All right, so we got all the holes cut. 2, 3, and 4. This one was a pain. Look at that. There's a lot going on there. Almost gave the old wheel a run for its money. This thing has been insanely good. Here, I'll just... DCG426. Go get one. Good Lord, the thing just eats through the fiberglass. So much better than a saw. Any saw that I've used. Alright, so how are we going to do this now? This is the one weird spot because this one has fabric on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this fabric in like this. And then, once it's in, we're going to essentially cut right here on that bend. We're going to glue this in. Pull it tight though. This stuff can be yanked. Pull it tight. And you won't have any seam on the inside. We did nick it a little bit right here, but that's okay. We're going to pull that in. It's going to stay tight. It's not going to shred. It's not going to fray out. It's not rope. But if you pull in, you can see the seam actually makes it up over the edge. So you won't see the seam anywhere on here. You just got to make sure you glue it and pull it tight. Okay, so I'm going to show you all a little secret, just so you know. So this is the old controller. It is going to be an absolute ass pain to move this cable out and go to the new Kenwood. These do not work with other radios. That's how they make their profits, is you have to buy their controller to work with their radios. But if you buy a 9-meter, or I think it's 19 or 9-meter cable for Kenwood, this size, because this is all you're going to get is from this plug to the controller on the new one. To buy this cable is like another $130. But if you unplug it and you look in there, there's like 7 pins or 10 pins in there, whatever it is. But the thing is, there's that many wires in here. You only need 5 for the Kenwood controller, so do not pull this out. Cut it off, cut the plug off of the Kenwood controller, solder the Kenwood controller plug to the radio, then come back over here and wire right into it, shrink tube it, and crimp it. And then throw it back in. You don't have to run the wire anymore. There's no point in doing all that extra effort when, you know, copper's copper. It doesn't really matter. All right, for these things, like I said, 5 wires in each one. So this is the Kenwood, this is the Jensen. You're probably wondering, well, if there's only 5 wires, why is there like 9 pins in this thing? Well, that is because the plugs from the manufacturer are cheaper to buy with more pins, because that type of plug is just, well, it's cheaper. So what they do is they put all these pins in there. Not all of them are wired. When you cut this off, you're gonna find there's only 5 wires in here, and they're all different colors, so you're not gonna be able to get them mixed up. Trick of the trade: cut this off, cut off the one that already exists, and use the wire, go back to the radio, and this wire will be there, and you just wire the same colors into the radio before you seal and shrink tube this one, so you know what wire colors go where. And there you go. You save yourself about 120 bucks. So we got the radio out, controller's unhooked. It was in here. So there's your other control cable. No need to sit there and buy one. Look at that. Look at this. Here's the radio antenna. It's all taped up. What the? You just can't trust people these days. Like, come on, man. All right, so here we are. Got the blower. Got the LED. That is a Cree XPE LED puck. That's all I use. Those are 2 ceramic or cement resistors. Yeah, the diffused thing and all of that, I don't even acknowledge those anymore. These are where it's at. So this is all 12 volt. We got the Bluetooth controller, got a relay to kick it on and off. But yeah, there it is. She done. So a little tip and trick when running wires in a boat. These fiberglass rods that linemen use to run cables through walls. See how that's poking out of there? That's what's coming through that hole right there. You just run it up the sides. That's it. All right, word of advice, if you've never bought a boat, just remember these things are like $70,000 to $90,000 for a boat this size. And look at this. This is how they put it together. It's not even glued. The foam is just like hand injected, and it's just garbage. Like what is all this extra material? Like, they must be making a profit just to leave all this stuff behind. But I mean, oh man, look at that. I wasn't even intending on taking that off. Shit. All right, so we got everything mounted up. Looks pretty good. We're gonna call it a day for today. Got the radio in, figured out accessory switch is what kicks it on. That took a while. This does not have a remote turn on, and for whatever reason it was wired, so accessory and constant were hooked together. That's not what we want. And out of everything that I brought today, the lugs for the battery is what I didn't bring. So this night is over. We got everything hooked up though. We do need to hook up the LEDs, but that's not an issue. And up in here, the power antenna connector or accessory turn on is up in there right now. There's like 3 foot of it buried in there, but I don't want to tear this down. I want to get this thing to start cleaning up. And then we'll come back out. We'll pop these with a DeWalt battery. Yeah, I know it's 20 volts, but this amp puts out like 70 volts at peak. So we'll get these popped. We'll get these all tied together and test them. Make sure that these are actually, you know, wired correct. And make sure that controller is wired correct as well, because it does have a volt positive here. Sometimes it's a ground with a hot trigger. So we'll make sure that this thing works. Probably should have did that before I brought it out here, but that's okay, because this is just stickied on. So is that relay. So those are replaceable. But yeah, you just gotta get this tied up, get these popped, and get these organized. And then we just gotta put a fuse on it near the battery. A thing too, do not take the fuse and put it up here, because you know, you want to add more shit to the board. Make sure the fuse is near the battery. The battery is the fuse is there to protect the boat from the battery. If you put it all the way up here, you got about 20 foot that's just going to fry, or until the battery melts the post off. So don't do that. Don't put it up here. It's not a look at me accessory. And then other than that, that turn on will go right up here into this little red connector. So it's positive, negative primaries, and then the turn on from the radio. There's your speakers, there's your audio signal. Everything's good. Did meter these out, so we know they're not touching. Now we're just gonna get, you know, all the crap off of here because it's a mess. He has given us another day, so let's not waste it. Alrighty, we got all the speakers in. Finally, I'm wired up, shrink tubed them all, everything tied. Here's what I was saying about that controller. You know, just trying to match them with the other cable. You know, get them close. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. And we're down to getting these things checked out. These are the ones I made. Went home, had lunch, got these made up. What we're gonna do now though is we need to do a continuity check on these. We don't want continuity. These aren't plugged in. They're not connected in any way. There's no reason why these should beep. All right, so we got everything pulled out of there. We got this part out. Amp is gonna go right here. With that being done, there's also a hole inside of here that I had to cut a little bit. We're still gonna have to go back behind there. There's no divider wall. There's a grommet up here, but it's way too hard to get through it. But we're gonna run the control cable for, or not the control cable, we're gonna run the RCA cable for signal. So we're gonna run that. So we got a hole through here. Everything's pulled through. We got positive, negative, the back speaker, the other one will come from here, and then the LEDs, and that'll all run out to here. And then our signal lines, or what would be RCAs, will go through, and then they'll pop out in here, go down by the back wall, come out, and then they'll go to the radio. And then from there, we'll have our signal in place. All right, so battery's hooked up. We have both the cables out here. They're both the same color, so things look like they match. Make sure you check them. Use a meter. Actually make sure you got the right polarity. Should get a positive number. Nope, they're negative. So this side's positive. We'll check it one more time just to be sure. Test this one. Positive 12.5. So this is negative.